Welcome back. The topic for today is the most valuable record in my entire collection. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because it just changed, or at least I think it did. So for those of you who've been watching my videos for a little bit, you may remember either, it might have been earlier this year, maybe it was late last year, I made a video and it was something along the lines of the top 10 most valuable records in my collection, but I added a caveat, and the caveat was that they were not Blue Note. And the reason why was because the most valuable records in my collection are Blue Notes. And I thought that it would just be too obvious. It would be like, you know, of course, those are going to be the ones that will be at the top. And I thought it would be more interesting to focus on the non-Blue Note. So I cast those aside and I thought I'll make a video on those at some point. And guess what? I didn't. So the funny thing is that I have a new record that probably sort of, is going to be ranked higher than probably the rest of them. And you don't even know what the rest of them are. I'm still going to push that for another video, but I just got this record, not in today. I just found it in a store like a week ago when I was visiting Philadelphia, and I was just so excited to come across it. It was an extremely reasonable price. It wasn't even close to the most expensive I've ever spent on a record, and so therefore the fact that it's likely at the top is particularly exciting. All right, so let's get into it. Obviously, I always say this, and I'm going to say it again. Hit subscribe, hit, notification bell, and then follow me on Instagram at what_can_brown. All right, so if you were paying attention, you'll notice that I used certain words like probably, maybe the most expensive record in my collection, and I'm using those words for a reason. When I previously did my top 10 list, I did it according to Discogs median value. And the reason why I even made the video is because everybody on YouTube at that moment was making a top records, top most expensive records based on Discogs median value. Now, as far as my collection goes, that is not a fair way to assess what is the most valuable record. And I think once you get to a certain price point, it's just not fair because we all know that condition is king. And so I could have a very, very rare record, right? Like say Candy, Lee Morgan's Candy, very rare. This is a original pressing. The maximum Discogs value, if you wanted to look at that, is $4,500, and it's gone for more than that on eBay. But guess what? My copy, not only does it have a little bit of water damage you can probably see, but the vinyl is probably in like the G+ range. It's not worth $4,500. It's probably not even worth $1,000. I don't know what it's worth, but the point is that even if that shows up in some sort of Discogs list, doesn't mean that it's the most valuable, right? Take another. So Smithville, Lewis Smith's Smithville. If you look at the median value on Discogs, this would be my most valuable record. And so if I was going to make a list based on top 10, and 9 of them would be Blue Note, and this would be number 1. All right, so the median Discogs value for this record is $1,900 or $1,940 median. Mine happens to be in just fantastic shape. So is median fair, or should I perhaps consider the maximum in this case, which is $3,100? Right, so this is why I'm saying that it's kind of like maybe is it possible that this record that I just got in, which is not neither of those. Is it possible that this is my most expensive or most valuable record? And it is possible. It's either going to be this one probably, or it's going to be maybe Smithville. It could be something else. That's the thing, is that you never know what a record's going to go for on any given day when the right bidders are at the table. And so it's just really hard to predict. And so what I wanted to do is not just talk about a record that I have is in terrible shape, but could be worth a lot of money. I wanted to have a little bit more reasonable sort of expectation of what my most valuable record is. And so anyway, that's now what we're finally getting into. All right, so the record in question is Lee Morgan, Volume 2, catalog number 1541. This is the record that I'm referring to that may indeed now be the most valuable record in my collection. So I guess, a couple of things. Maybe first, let's start with how I found it. Because what I didn't do is just be the top bidder on eBay. That wouldn't be any fun. So I was visiting Philadelphia, not for the purpose of shopping for records. In fact, I only went into a couple of shops, and I didn't really come away with much, except for this one. But I was visiting Philadelphia. We had plans pretty much all weekend. Let's see, it was on Saturday, it started raining, and a outdoor festival that we were going to go to got canceled. And so we had to kind of make up a last minute plan. And we decided to go to, what side of town was it? It's called Fishtown. So Fishtown, it's like, I don't know, what is it? It's like northeast sort of side of Philadelphia. And I had no expectations for going up there, didn't even know that there was any record stores. We were going because Fishtown was having a festival, and it was kind of like an Oktoberfest thing. So they closed down the street, everybody's drinking beer out of like liter steins, right? So that kind of thing. And so, you know, it was last minute, had no intention of going up there, and we just ended up going up there. And, you know, so we arrive, grab a beer, walking around up and down the street, and I come upon Philadelphia Record Exchange, not to be confused with the Princeton Record Exchange. So I went in the door of Philadelphia Record Exchange, handed my beer off because I wasn't, you know, I don't like bringing like open containers inside of a vinyl shop. I'm a little bit smarter than that. And as soon as I walked in, acknowledged the owner on the left in front of the counter and or behind the counter, and I look on the wall, right? You always got to look at the wall and see what the most valuable stuff is. And sure enough, I saw a number of very interesting titles. I saw Mobley's second message on Prestige. I saw, what is it, Introducing Lee Morgan? I think it's called Introducing Lee Morgan on Savoy. Or Presenting Lee Morgan, one of the two. I saw Soul Train, John Coltrane's Soul Train, and I saw this Lee Morgan. Now, I saw those up there on the wall, and I figured, listen, this is a brick and mortar shop. They have the ability to do all their own research, know what the stuff is worth, and I am not the type of person who pays market value for records. I've said this in previous videos, because market value these days is just way beyond my price point. I can't justify it. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get enough value out of a record when it requires you to spend so much money. And so, yeah, that's just kind of that's just kind of my mentality. I understand that there's people that have more money, that it's less of a deal to them, but it's just difficult for me to justify. So I see those up there. I didn't even think anything of it. I was like, I bet that stuff is just really pricey. I'm going to go over to the bins and see if I can find something that's a little bit more in my price range. So I'm flipping through the bins. I go through the entire jazz section, which wasn't that large, gotta say, but they had some interesting stuff, but there was nothing in the jazz section for me that, you know, say I didn't already have. So I was only in there for maybe, at that point, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. So I decide to head out and, you know, and sort of proceed with my day. And as I'm passing by the desk, I was like, you know what, that 1541. So I was interested in all of them, but I was kind of like, let me just see what the most ridiculous one on the wall is going for. And so I asked the guy behind the counter, hey, you know, just out of curiosity, like, I'm sure that I'm not interested, out of curiosity, you know, how much is that record? And he doesn't tell me, but he takes it off the wall and he's like, here, why don't you take a look? So I take this record, and a couple of things. One thing that kind of struck me, and actually now that I'm thinking about it, let me see if I actually replaced the sleeve yet, because I might not have. It would be more interesting if I hadn't replaced the sleeve, and it looks like I did, so bummer. What the record sleeve said was not that it was an original. It said Lexington, Deep Groove, and it said not framed cover. That's what it said. And on the other side of the sleeve was a sticker, and I'm not you know, ashamed to say it said $300. So anyway, this was the record, and if you can take a closer look here, what you'll realize, maybe right there, is that it is indeed a framed cover, despite the fact that it didn't say framed cover. And actually, for those folks who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to put up a comparison here of what a framed cover is and a non-framed cover. And then you may ask, who cares about the framed cover? It's about the music. And that is true, but what we're talking about here is value, and people who will pay top dollar for this record, they want the framed cover, because the framed cover is an earlier version of the cover. Both discs inevitably are Lexington, whether you're talking about framed or non-framed. but people pay more for framed. And we're talking about whether this record is the most valuable in my collection and whether it would command, say a higher price than another. And so I think it's relevant. So anyway, I see that. I see the $300, and I take out the disc. And I'm sorry, I should have had this ready to go right in front of me. And I take out the disc, and I just could not believe how clean this thing was. And I'll show you a close-up. But I just could not believe how clean this record was. It's Lexington. Obviously, it's got the ear, it's got the deep groove, it's got the etched RVG. It's also the flat edge cover, or excuse me, the flat edge disc, which is also an indicator of how early it is. If you look at the address on the back of the cover, it's Lexington. Essentially, all indications of an original pressing were there. They were present. And if I were to grade this, I would say that it's EX. I mean, only in bright light is there even a hairline. There's nothing on it. There's maybe the tiniest little sleeve scuffs or whatever. It's just, I always hesitate to call a record so old and potentially so valuable as anything greater than EX, because there's always going to be that person who, if you say near mint minus and they hear the tiniest little blip or a little bit of static, then they're gonna call BS on it, right? But I just couldn't believe it, because in my mind, and I hadn't looked it up yet, in my mind, this is potentially a $2,000 or $3,000 record. Now, again, I know it has gone for less, but it's also definitely gone for $3,000 before. And in my mind, it was somewhere in there. And so when I saw the 300, I thought it was missing a zero. So I decided to pull the trigger. Didn't even feel bad about it one bit, because I knew that if I later regretted spending even $300, and I've done that before, that I could easily sell it for significantly more. And here's the thing. Obviously, I don't regret it. I love Lee Morgan. I love old Blue Notes, and to be able to have something in so fantastic of shape was just really exciting to me. All right, so when it comes to assessing value for something like this, and why do I think that this is probably the most expensive, especially compared to Smithville? I mean, even just take Smithville aside. So, I looked on PopPsych, I looked on Discogs, and Discogs, funnily enough, the top price for this record, the max for this record, is $800, something like that. But you know what? It hasn't sold very much, and on Discogs. And if you look at eBay, the number of listings that they have for it, of completed auctions, that are greater than $2,500 is actually not insignificant. It's 6 or 7 different listings with really at a sort of a variety of price points, right? So I'm going to show you just a couple of those, again, sort of PopPsych listings, right? So that you can see some of the examples of, different price points that this is sold for. And, at its peak, again, at least according to PopPsych, we have hit that 3,000 before. But maybe even more importantly than, say, top price ever, right? It's kind of recency, and then obviously you have to look at condition as well. And just earlier this year, there was a listing or a completed auction, theoretically, right? When you see a completed auction on PopPsych, your expectation is that it actually has been completed, but we don't necessarily know. Could have been an issue and maybe a refund or something like that. But in any event, earlier this year, it seems to have sold for $2,800. So, and there's a variety of completed listings on PopPsych at or around that $2,800 price point. Now, we're still talking about just that highest end kind of area, plus the fact that it depends on what you're searching for on PopPsych. Because I think I put in Lee Morgan 1541. Not everybody's going to put the catalog number in the heading. If I put in Lee Morgan Volume 2, if I just put in Lee Morgan Blue Note, I might end up finding other listings. But in any event, just looking at those top ones, it seems like there's at least a possibility that would be worth somewhere in there on the right day with the right bidders at the table. Obviously, you never know. I don't have a huge presence on eBay, so I likely wouldn't be able to command as much. But listen, I'm not selling it anyway. So the funny thing, though, and something that came into my consideration set now that we've kind of moved past value and that kind of thing, is that you know, spending $300 is not a small amount of money, but again, I've spent more than that before on individual records, although I try to do it as seldom as possible. So the interesting thing, though, in buying this was that I actually already have a copy, and this just seems like, you know, like, I don't know, like I don't deserve it, right? I don't deserve finding this clean copy because I already have one. But this would have been an example where I showed you a Blue Note cover and said, look what I have, but guess what? The vinyl is G+. And it's not a frame cover, so it's not quite as desirable, I suppose. So in any event, what went into the equation for me when I found this record for $300 at a store was that I'd be selling this. And I don't know what a G+ copy is worth these days. If it's playable and it doesn't have a skip, you know, maybe people would spend a little bit more just to have the object. Obviously, I did that at some point with this copy, although I don't recall how much I spent. But I figured that at the very least, this would help offset some of the purchase price, make it a little bit more of a sort of digestible purchase. So anyway, that's kind of, that's kind of it. This is sort of a short video, but it was such a sort of a momentous occasion for me in my hobby that I care so much about to be able to find such a great record for what I thought was just a fantastic price in store. And to be able to add it to my collection, spin it, enjoy the music, certainly much more. I don't have any other version of this record besides that G+ copy beforehand. So now I finally have an ability to listen to this fantastic music in its full glory. And yeah, this sort of thing doesn't happen that often. I mean, maybe the last time that was probably when I got that Smith fill-in, right, which was in 2020 through a collection buy that I still need to highlight in one of these videos at some point. But point is, it doesn't happen that often. It was momentous, and I wanted to make a quick video to sort of share. So I guess that's it. I hope this was interesting. I know some people like to see some of these rare records. If you're interested in a G+ copy, well, look out on eBay. I'll tell you what I'll do. I am going to link in the description the last video that I made about the most valuable non-Blue Note records that are in my collection, in case anybody's interested in that. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to link to my video that I made about Blue Note records in bad condition. This was I think a relatively popular video that I made. I think it did better than most, where all I was doing was talking about and showing you rare Blue Note records, like the most rare Blue Note records that I own, that are just in like awful shape. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I still need to do another video and focus on like Prestige or something, because I think I have some rough condition stuff on that label too. All right, thanks everyone for joining in, and I'll see you next time.